Yes. Okay. And I always say, I'm sorry if I seem distracted, but I have to watch the waiting room and let people in. So forgive me if I seem like I'm a little distracted. So welcome everybody. I said at the beginning, I'm excited to learn more about these programs today. And if you didn't hear me, if you'll sign into the chat. And then with us today, we have Elizabeth Curley, who does clinical services at the health department, and then Donna Hill and their recovery support specialists, which I'm excited to learn more about. So if y'all don't mind just telling a little bit about what you do at the health department and kind of your role there. And then later on, I want to get into how you see trauma in the programs that you do, how you help people build resiliency, and then also how you promote wellness in yourself. So we'll start with introductions. Elizabeth, if you want to go.
Sure. I'm Elizabeth Curley. I know a lot of these faces, and I'm really excited to see some new faces and new names in the little Zoom boxes. I am a social worker here at Op Healthcare. I work on our clinical services team. I've been here for a little over about 4.5 years, started out on community health with some of my other lovely colleagues that are on this call. I do a little bit of everything here at the health department. I have just recently taken over some of our complex care management. I supervise 2 of our other care coordination programs, care management programs, our care coordination for children and our pregnancy care management programs. And then I also just support clinical services in general, which is why I'm up front in Watauga today with our windows closed, so I could have a couple of moments mask free so I could actually talk with you all during this call. So yeah, it's about, I do a lot of things. It's random.
We'll come back around to you and ask you some other questions in just a minute. So Donna, I muted you, Donna, so because of the feedback is bad, but unmute yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do and some of the people that you have with you.
Hi everyone, I'm Donna Hill. I'm the Director of Community Health Services at App Healthcare, also known as Appalachian District Health Department, and we cover the 3 counties, Watauga, Ashland, Allegheny. And we do have 3 of our certified peer support specialists with us today. 2 of them recently went through their certification training, so we're happy they were finally able to do that. But we work under a couple of different, or they work under a couple of different grants. One is called the CLC grant, or Community Linkages to Care, which focus on implementing post-overdose response teams in the communities. One strategy, the second strategy is to implement or enhance syringe exchange programs, and then the third is to connect justice-involved individuals to care. So whatever it looks like for that person. And the other grant is just some federal funds through our FQHC. And we have, I'll let them introduce themselves, but Joey, Jeannie, and John, if you'll just talk about which counties you primarily work in and introduce yourselves, I'll let them go ahead.
Thanks, Donna.
Hey, I'm Joey Matthews. I'm the peer support specialist in Watauga County. Oh, can y'all hear me? It looks like it's breaking up.
No, we can hear you, Joey. Your sound quality is good. There you are. Now we can see you too. All right, Joey, you said you served Watauga?
Yes, ma'am. So y'all can see me and hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, good.
And who else, Donna?
Jeannie, if you want to go next, I see you.
You just want introductions?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Jeannie Berry. I work primarily in Ash, but I work in all 3 counties. I'm the full-time peer support. So if John needs something in Allegheny or one of his peers, then I go over there. And if Joey needs help or needs something in Watauga, then I go over there. And most of my syringe exchanges happen here in my volunteer work through Watauga. But so I just work wherever I need to.
Thanks, Jeannie.
Hi, I'm John Simmons. I'm Recovery Peer Support Specialist. I work primarily in Allegheny, but I do cross all 3 counties. My main focus up until COVID was justice-involved individuals at the local jail, but I do a little bit of everything, whatever's needed. Contact people to MAT or whatever, you know. So.
Well, and honestly, I know very little about the recovery specialists and what y'all do and how people get hooked in with y'all and who y'all are connected to. So either Don or one of y'all, if you could just explain to us a little bit more about, like, when we can move into our second question with this, how you see people from trauma and what you do, but like what, I guess you're working with people with addiction. And so how do referrals come to you? What's your caseload like? Like, just, I don't know a thing about what you do.
I can start and then let John, John's been with us the longest, so I'll let him kind of take the lead, but they do work with people who have substance use disorder, and also who are in recovery of substance use disorder, or anyone that needs to be connected to resources. So they act as that resource point, that peer-to-peer connection. So that they are, as a peer support specialist, someone who is in recovery themselves, so they have that special connection to someone who is on that journey, either in active addiction or seeking recovery, to be able to connect on that level, which, you know, has been shown to work very well if it's someone who has walked in those shoes and knows that journey and has had that experience. They're able to connect to that person in a way that myself or someone else can't. So to get the certification, it's actually a 60-hour training through the state of North Carolina. It's a 40-hour core training on trauma and self-care and all types of things like that. And Joey and Jeannie just recently went through it. John has went through it previously. And then an extra 20 hours of other types of trainings to be able to receive that certification as a North Carolina Certified Peer Support Specialist. We take referrals all different ways. If anyone has a client they would like to refer to us, we, you know, can come meet with that person in person, taking all precautionary safety precautions, of course, you know, be able to connect that person to treatment or meetings or just peer support. Just some people just need that support of another peer, whatever that looks like. And John, if you want to pick up from there and add more to that, and Jeannie and Joey as well.
Yeah, you know, the peer support is I've been with AppHealth for going on almost 2 years now. I guess it'd be 2 years in February, as a peer support specialist, you know. And we're, you know, the trauma-informed stuff and everything you hear today, you know, Donna said, we meet people where they're at, you know, and we have lived experience with what they've been through, you know, and so there's very little judgment or no judgment at all, you know. I try to meet people, you know, exactly where they're at. You know, if I have to meet them in the parking lot at wherever, you know, that's where I show up, you know, with no, you know, try not to have the badges, you know, any of that stuff, you know, just try to meet people where they're at, find out, you know, what happened and what they need, you know, and how I can help, you know, and from there, I link people to basically whatever they want, you know, be it treatment, meetings, you know, syringe services, mental health counseling, you know, anything. I try to provide those services, or at least give them a link to those services, you know, so they don't feel like, you know, they have to muddle through this on their own, you know. And most of my work has been, like I say, with justice involved individuals. I was going into the jail pretty regular, so that's where most of my stuff was coming out of. And you know, I have contacts with the community safety, the probation and parole department. I get referrals from them, you know. everybody has my information. You know, we pretty much blanket covered Watauga, Ashland, Allegheny County with any services that we thought that might use us, you know. So if you don't have our number, we'll give it to you.
And y'all are welcome to put that in the chat if you'd like, and so people can write that down. So 2 questions. One question is, it sounds like people don't have to be in treatment, like that their first step can be contact with y'all, correct?
Correct. Yeah, and we don't, you know, we ask them what they need. You know, we don't say, do you want treatment? You know, we ask them what they need and work from there, you know, because a lot of people aren't ready for treatment, or may not even need treatment. You know, they may need something totally different than that, you know. So that's where we try to meet them, you know, and just let them know that we're here for them.
And then my second question was, oh gosh, it's already left me. I'm so sorry. I'm sure it'll come back into my brain. Oh, and so people can call you directly. The person seeking your services can call you directly, but you said other people are calling you as well on their behalf and doing that linkage as well.
Right, yes.
All right, well, thank you for sharing all that. I'm going to circle back around to Elizabeth, and then we'll bring y'all back in just a few minutes. So thank you for that information. And so thinking about how you see people from trauma and the programs and services that you provide, I think each setting is different a little bit in how they see people from trauma. So if Elizabeth, you and then the other people could just talk about kind of how you see people from trauma. What are some of the either symptoms or characteristics that you tend to find yourself working with?
Sure. I think through my role, I see trauma a lot of different ways because I'm kind of touching different programs within our clinical services. You know, I think when I'm seeing patients kind of like up front here, like coming into the health departments, you know, I think we see trauma looks a lot like missing appointments, not being able to get a hold of people, them, you know, just feeling really scattered and kind of not able to really kind of keep up with some of those finer details because they're struggling with so many other things behind the scenes. I think it also looks like with our care management programs, you know, sometimes we're working just with maternity patients, preparing for them to have another child or their first child. And that, you know, we're screening for domestic violence, substance use, trauma from their own history, you know, doing depression screening. So that can show up in a lot of different ways. We're meeting them there kind of where they also are. You know, for our pregnancy care management program, that does have to be individuals who either have Medicaid or qualify for pregnancy Medicaid. So unfortunately in that way, we don't get to carry undocumented individuals because they don't qualify for pregnancy Medicaid their full pregnancy because they don't have a social security number. So that is one way that I see kind of that as a gap that we're not really getting to support those individuals with those specific programs, the care management programs. Now, of course, at the health department, just in clinical services, absolutely, they can receive, you know, all of our basic services that we offer here. There's never any question about documentation or anything like that. For our care coordination for children program, thankfully that is a really broad definition. Usually the child has to have some type of special health care need, but family having gone through trauma is one of those special health care needs. And so again, you're working with families, you may be working on housing, you may be working on food, you may be working on making sure their electricity stays on. One of my care managers just this week, we were calling all over the community trying to figure out where we could get a CO2 monitor because people are using alternate heat sources and you know, especially with all the job loss with COVID and everything. So we're seeing it a lot of different ways. I also forgot to mention, I also am a clinical therapist. And so seeing predominantly my caseload is adolescents. And so, you know, seeing how they present with trauma kind of while they're going through it is also a little bit different than the adults that we see. But it still, you know, shows up in a lot of different ways. So that's kind of how I see it kind of on a day-to-day basis. I feel like, which most people in general, but a lot of our patients that we see here through the health department, no matter what lens it is, or have some type of trauma connection, just like the rest of the general population.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to read a few things in the chat before I let Donna and the recovery specialist answer this. But one question was, how long does someone need to be clean and sober to qualify for the recovery support specialist training? The answer was possibly 2 years, but officially 1. And then Jeannie mentioned that it's very important that we have our own wellness and accountability program. Not only do I agree with that, but that's been a big focus of ours at WCCI is our own wellness. So we're going to talk about that towards a little bit later in the show. And then Candace reminded everybody, type your name in the chat. Okay, and so I think we're caught up now. And so then for Donna, the recovery support specialist, can you talk a little bit about how you see trauma in the people that you're connected to?
Yes, I'd love for Jeannie, John, and Joey, one of y'all to talk about, especially with COVID, we have seen increases in certain activity and behavior with looming ongoing COVID pandemic. And also, I just like to say, on top of their other responsibilities as the rest of the health department, they have lots of COVID duties as well. And one of the COVID duties or a couple that they have is they're answering calls with the rest of the community health team on the COVID hotline. So there's, seems like there's constantly someone who is in, some type of crisis. They're panicked, or they're worried, or they're scared, or they need resources. They're in quarantine and they can't go to work, so they can't pay their bills and different things like that. But not only are they answering those calls, but they're also delivering support or filling support needs. So if we have someone who is quarantined as a close contact or in isolation because they're positive for COVID, they are like, if one of those people who are in quarantine or isolation needs groceries or needs their medication, going out and picking those things up and delivering those to that person's home. So I'd like for them to maybe talk about some things that they've seen, related to that.
I know in my experience so far, especially with the community support needs, I'm seeing a lot more fear, in children. When I go out to the house, I have to completely dress or have my vehicle lined up to where they can just come out and reach in and get a box and take it out if it's, something like that. I'm running into making phone calls to connect with those folks and finding people who are intoxicated on a regular basis now. I know that overdose has gone up, and I'm hearing about more people living in encampments, in tents, and that's. But I suspected there was a possibility that with our population that we support, that COVID may end up not being as big a problem as all the other surrounding mental issues and the using issues and misuse. And that seems to be the case as far as our population that we support. We're not finding as many COVID positive cases because they don't want to be around people, unless they're around their own. And so that's been about the only plus. The rest of it has been pretty serious, and we're limited in what we can do, and we have to accept that. And sometimes that's difficult.
Well, and I'm glad you touched on this. I was going to bring it up at some point because we've had some conversations about everything that I've read indicates increases in use, misuse. Mm-hmm. And I think Susie's on this call, and she was talking at a meeting we were in together recently about just being more aware of, how, if this is stressful and a strain for those of us with resources, and supports, then imagine the people who struggle regularly with substance use and addiction. And so I appreciate you bringing that up, that while COVID may not be as big of an issue, it definitely, the isolation and the stress is taking a significant toll on the people that you're working with. John, or what was the other person's name? Josh? If y'all have anything that you'd like to add to that.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I see the stress on the people that I serve, from the COVID, but it's, mostly my peers, it's, I don't want to say business as usual, because they are such a tight-knit community in most cases that we stay to ourselves, and we just work with the people that we work with, or deal with the people that we deal with, however you want to put that, and it's been more stressful, to them maintaining their current usage, if you can follow what I'm saying, because of the restrictions of where they can go, what they can do, and their travel restrictions and things like that, but it's mostly just and the resources are always tight anyway, what we can do for them and what we can find for them, and that restriction has put some people in a bind as far as groceries and things like that, not just the people that are on quarantine from COVID, but the people that I work with on a daily basis. It's just that resources have closed down and dried up, and that's a very stressful place to be when that's how you provide for yourself, so it's just, it's not easy and not getting any easier. And so, we just keep plugging along, doing what we can do,
I appreciate that. And it's Joey, not Josh. So Joey, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I know personally from the peers I've been seeing, I see a lot of peers out of the hospitality house here in Watauga and that trailer park beside it. Since COVID, I've noticed the number of syringes I'm giving out and exchanging with my peers is starting to increase. So I know they're using more and more frequently. Like it's increased kind of a shocking amount. I know this couple I've been doing syringe exchange for, I went from giving them 60 syringes a week to now it's like 100 and something I'm giving them a week. So they've almost doubled how many they're needing.
Well, that's a good specific number to help us have some context. So Jeannie's mentioned a couple times about boundaries and your own wellness, which I'm really interested in hearing more about. Elizabeth, if you can start us off by talking about how you maintain wellness in yourself and boundaries. We'll talk about that, and then how you help people build resilience. We'll circle back around to that after.
I think for me, I have had to get a lot better about this, especially as this has continued to progress. And I've had lots of conversations with a lot of my colleagues and peers about this as well. I think for myself, like really putting my phone down and trying to detach from the screen as much as possible when I get off work is really helpful. Not like incessantly checking my email from work, although that is challenging. I have also like taken off like notifications on my phone, like especially if I'm like out of town, like on the weekend, so I can really be present with whatever I'm doing. That's been very helpful to kind of maintain those boundaries. Otherwise, I think, I try to be outside and exercise as much as possible. I'm still not going in. I don't feel good about going into like gyms and stuff right now, but hiking and just going for a walk in the evening, even if it's just for 20 minutes, that's been really beneficial to me. I also like to cook, and that's really helpful. And just kind of cutting myself some slack, I also think has been really helpful. It's really easy to feel guilty when you feel like you're not doing enough throughout all this, especially as a helping professional. And one thing, I've been in therapy for multiple years, and that's been really helpful to me too. But one thing that I've just really tried to do for myself is cut myself as much slack as I'm allowing other people. That this is a really weird time, and that's hard, but I'm trying to do it. And for the most part, it works. And so, I'm just continuing to try to focus on that, to give myself some grace and cut myself some slack, and know that I am doing the best that I can do. And that's got to be good enough for what I can offer. So.
That's a lot of really great, specific, concrete examples. Thank you. Sorry for the feedback. I keep trying to, we're all muted except for me and you, so there's nothing more I can do beyond that.
All good.
So Donna and Jeannie and John and Joey, if y'all can talk to us a little bit about, especially, I love that it was part of the recovery support specialist training, that they really emphasized it to that degree. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about what they said about that and how y'all practice that.
Yeah, I love this work. So it's hard for me to set boundaries. I didn't have any boundaries when I took the job. I've been in recovery for a long time, and helping people is how I keep that recovery going. So, I have a very hard time with boundaries, but I do have several hobbies, and I've been at this for a while. I was retired when I took this job. So, it meant so much to me to do this, that I was willing to give up my retirement, but having hobbies, I'm an avid cyclist. I love hiking. I do that. And I do, I can cut my phone off, and I can do stuff and go places where I don't have cell service, which helps me because, I like to keep up with, with everything and what's going on and with the people I serve, so, but I do force myself to lay it down occasionally, but like I say, this is what I love to do, so it's hard for me to separate job from life and things like that.
Well, I love that you say that you don't have any boundaries, or that those are hard for you, because I think a lot of times when you're talking about wellness, it's the mere fact of, are we able to impose boundaries or create boundaries for ourselves and stick to them? So I appreciate it when someone's honest about that. That's a hard thing to do, and it's difficult, and you really have to work at it. So thanks for that. Jeannie, do you have anything to add?
When we did our peer support training, we first had to complete 20 hours of what's called WRAP, and that's a Wellness Recovery Action Plan. And so we had to actually do this for ourselves so that we could also implement that when we work with our peers, like if they have long-term goals or if they want to utilize those kinds of tools. And I really enjoy that. I have been spending a little bit of time with it, learning a little more about it, adding to mine, the original one that I made. And you just kind of evaluate where you are and what wellness looks like when you're in a well state or a weller state, and then go from there. And then, really look at the process of what happens when you kind of go south. And it's a plan anybody could use, not just someone who has lived experience or is a substance misuser. And so that's really neat to have that tool. I do have boundaries, but I at one time was a nurse, and so I learned how to do that. So that's worked in my favor. I love this job. As a matter of fact, when I heard about this job and I went for the interview, I just walked right in the door, and I'd never been this audacious and bold in my entire life when it came to selling myself. But I walked in there and I looked at Danyelle and I said, you need to give me this job. I can do this, and I can do it well. I love recovery. I love the fact that I get an opportunity to give back and get supported by amazing people and get paid. And one of the habits that I've developed here since I've gone through the peer support training is I check in with myself. What did I do last night? What did I do this morning for my recovery or for my wellness, or, for my action plan for being weller? And did I exercise? Did I eat? Did I remember to drink water? Did I take my dogs for a walk? Did I make a phone call that I just wanted to talk to a buddy of mine? So I make a habit of doing that every day now.
Well, I really appreciate that they incorporated that into part of your training as a critical part of who you are and what you do. I hope as we move towards trauma-informed agencies and businesses and care, community care, that we continue to emphasize that. Joey, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I'll just add about the boundaries. I know when I first started, I was kind of unsure what boundaries I had. Really, you kind of learn that as you go. I know time is my main boundary, where mine's about after 7 o'clock at night, I won't do syringe exchange. It's just because I've had, even still now, I mean, people will call or text you at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you can't, if you're running around doing that, you'll go crazy. So yeah, just setting boundaries and time of when I will do a syringe exchange with my peers has helped my wellness so much, because I know once 7 or 8 o'clock hits, I can relax. It's put the phone away and just have some self-care time.
That's an interesting quantifier. It made me think of, I rarely used to get calls after school hours. People know when I work, and rarely, unless it was a genuine crisis. And in the past month or so, I've lost track of the number of calls and texts I've gotten after 11 p.m., after 1 p.m. I don't turn off my phone because my son is in Raleigh going to college down there, and so I don't like to turn off my phone. So my teenager taught me how to turn it off, but they know the trick to still get through, which I was thankful to know. But that's one way that I've been measuring the amount of crisis and stress that people are living in, is the amount of calls that continue to go up after school hours these days. So that's a good point about setting a boundary with time as well. I'm checking the chat, no new questions just yet. So let's talk about then, and then we've talked about boundaries in ourselves and wellness for ourselves, how we build resilience in others and help others, especially people from trauma, to develop boundaries and wellness for themselves. So Elizabeth, you want to go first?
Yes, sure. I think it's a lot of some of those same principles that the peer supports we're talking about. It really is kind of meeting people where they're at and really celebrating like incremental gains. I think that is probably the biggest thing that I can think of, like when I was really thinking about this question beforehand. So many people like have like small wins, and nobody's ever celebrated those for them before. So helping them celebrate those, like when we're working with maternity patients, and they have been able to cut down smoking like by like a pack a day. Yeah, maybe they're still smoking and maybe they're still pregnant, but the fact that I was like, wow, good job. They were like, oh my gosh, nobody has ever said that to me before. Like, I just keep getting all of this pushback because I'm still smoking. I'm like, well, yeah, if you know what, if that's the goal is to quit smoking, and yes, there are side effects for your child, but the fact that you've been able to cut down, like you've cut in half what you've been doing. I mean, kudos to you for trying and just kind of trying to go about it that way. And I think that, whenever I was going through a lot of just training and kind of learning about what they're talking about, like this harm reduction philosophy, this idea of kind of just of celebrating those incremental gains and of, pointing out things to people that they've never had pointed out to them before because society sees them one certain way. And I think that kind of goes with whatever population I'm working with. I know, especially when I'm doing like therapy with my adolescents for resiliency, it kind of is the same thing, but we're talking about I do a lot of just talk about like really simple stuff that we've talked a lot about in WCCI, meditation, breathing. I mean, I know I've learned more about breathing like from Susie Woodard and like our meetings, than I ever thought possible. And it's so simple. But just passing on those little tips and tricks, sharing what I know works for me and letting people know that it's okay if it doesn't work for you. It's not a one size fits all. And again, allowing them for maybe the first time in their life to ever not fit into a box, and for it to maybe be okay that they don't really know what shape their box is right now. I don't think it's ever one size fits all for anybody that we work with. And I know that my colleagues, and I'm sure everybody on this call agrees. So that's the biggest thing. I could never settle on one thing I did with anybody.
Donna, I didn't get to you with the boundaries question. Is there anything that you want to say about having wellness yourself or helping other people build resilience?
No, I don't think there's anything I want to add. The peer support specialist and Elizabeth do most of the direct, provide the direct needs, or, have the direct contact with clients. Joey did say something on our community health call the other day. We were kind of talking about self-care, and he said something I thought was impactful. Joey, you may need to correct me if I'm wrong, but he said something about, he always goes and works out first thing in the morning, and he works out really hard, and that way he knows that if he's worked really hard first thing in the morning and done all he can do, like there's not going to be anything that's harder to deal with throughout the day if he already knows that he's done his best first thing in the morning. And Joey, if you want to follow up on that, I thought that was really impactful what you said, and I may not have repeated it correctly, but would you talk about that again?
Hey, Don, sorry, just to clarify, this phone is ringing on this phone line. I was trying to handle this real quick, but talking about the struggling in the morning and everything's easier during the day, is what you're talking about?
Yes, what you said about the gym and all of that and handling things throughout the day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so for me, if I love exercising, that's my big self-care thing. So if I get up in the morning and I work out real hard and it's tough and I'm uncomfortable and I have to struggle, then whatever happens the rest of the day is easy because nothing's going to make me that uncomfortable. I've already been uncomfortable. So that's just kind of, and that can apply to anything, just working hard. I mean, if you work hard, then you feel good afterwards.
Yeah, that makes good sense. I think maybe it's Elizabeth that said this, but the interns always want to pull a quote from these conversations. And so I loved what you said, Elizabeth, about the people we work with don't fit in a box and they don't even know what the shape of their box is. I can't tell you how many times I have been that person when I was like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing here. I don't know what's going on. I don't feel like I fit or belong. So I love that quote. That was a good one. I wrote it down. And then John and Jeannie, Joey, while we've got you, if you want to go ahead and add anything that you can about helping build resilience in others, and what are some of the things that you do with the people that you have contact with to help them build their own wellness?
For me, I just kind of let them know that I've had a couple peers really. They say, man, like this job, like, how did you get this job? This is awesome. I'm like, well, you could do this. Like, I'm no different than you. I'm just a couple years, ahead of, but this, you can, I mean, I was you. I was just like you. So we're no different. That's kind of my thing. I just try to just kind of empower people with that. Like, if you just stick to it, stick to your recovery, then you can do things you never expected.
So encouragement and building that relationship and connection. We talk a lot about how connections and relationships heal. So building relationships and connections.
Yep.
Jeannie, what would you like to add?
I often just listen first. Like before I do anything else, I just listen. Whether it's you know, they're irate about whatever, to, you know, their whole entire story revealed to me, you know, in 20 minutes in our first meeting. It's just valuable to listen and honor that, and let them know that I value whatever it is that they're saying. And I can also hear more about their true situation and what they might need. So I have some ideas, you know, and then if they're open to those, I can provide them then. And if not, if nothing else, it just starts building a more stable relationship between the two of us. You know, I'm there, I'm listening, I care about what you say. And like Elizabeth said, you know, I really like to celebrate small things, because sometimes I'll catch myself go, I'll do something and I'll do it pretty good or okay, and I'll go, yay me. So that's one of my catchphrases, just yay me. You know, I did that all right.
When you type something in the chat, if no one saw it, that as long as if someone is still alive, then there's hope. And we had somebody named Tony or Kane come down and do a conference for us a few years ago, and she talked about that none of us have the right to give up hope on another person, that you never know when the moment of change is going to happen. And so we talk a lot in WCCI about a factor to offset trauma is a positive, consistent, caring relationship. And so when you were talking about listening, I know a lot of people from trauma never had anybody to listen to them, and didn't learn about boundaries from their home environment because there weren't any boundaries. And so kind of modeling what that's like to be listened to and valued, and to have boundaries and practice wellness, that's a brand new experience for people from trauma. John, what can you add to that for us?
Sure. I believe in harm reduction. You know, I'm a big proponent of harm reduction, and it's, you know, one of their slogans is nothing for us without us, you know, and so I get people's input, you know, I ask them, what do y'all need? You know, how can we serve you better? You know, and then I also get them involved, you know, with whatever we happen to be doing, you know, to get the word out and to, you know, hand out cards, flyers, whatever, you know, so they're a part of this thing. They're not someone coming just to get services from me. You know, they are involved. They do help me, you know, and we're all in this together, you know, as far as building the community. And, you know, people who use drugs are people, you know, and, you know, me and Ashley that did this for a year together, you know, we had this slogan that we use, you know, no one recovers from being dead, you know, so if we can keep somebody alive, you know, there's always that chance, you know, that they're gonna realize, and you know, not everybody wants to quit using drugs, you know, and that's, you know, that's not my place, you know, to tell people, you know, quit or anything. You know, my job is to meet them exactly where they're at and provide whatever services they think they need, you know, so, and getting their input is great, you know, and making them, you know, that they are a part of this thing, you know, so.
I appreciate that. Let's stop for just a few minutes and see if we have any comments or questions for anybody that's on this meeting. You don't have to raise your hand or wait for me to, if you'll just unmute yourself if you have something you'd like to say or a question you'd like to ask anybody. I might give people just a minute to get to their mute buttons before we move forward. So if you have any questions or comments.
Denise, this is Jordan. I'd have a question that I've been thinking about this past week, just kind of leading up to this, and it kind of works out on the topic. But how would you guys encourage someone who's struggling to quote unquote remove their mask, right? Get comfortable to talk about it, be real about it. I guess kind of create a safe place. But any ideas come to mind? Any practices?
I love that question, Jordan. Thanks for asking. And so Jordan is works in a business in Watauga County and has frequently been available to help when people have a need. So I appreciate him being here and asking that question, which I think is a good one. Like, how are you fully present with people who either aren't ready yet or don't know how? And Candace and I have this conversation all the time. One of her favorite sayings is planting seeds. And a minute ago when I said, because you don't know when the moment of change is going to happen, and having worked in this field, in this same system for 27 years of working with grandparents and then children and now grandchildren, and just knowing that you stay consistently present, and then one day you turn around and somebody decided to make a change, that is a pretty miraculous, powerful thing. So that, I know for me, that being fully present and continuing to be consistent and not react, a lot of the people that we worked with from trauma are really experts at keeping you at arm's length and pushing you away and not letting you build a relationship with them. So, staying steady is one of my things. But Elizabeth, do you have any suggestions about how you build relationships with people who are struggling and when you find it difficult to do that?
I think I'm just going to echo kind of what you said. I mean, just to give them time. I think that sometimes it's really hard to do that, especially when you're just having really brief interactions with people. But over time, if you're that consistent person and you're always kind of like, they can see like transparently that there's not another like ulterior motive of you wanting to know stuff other than just to support them. I think that's the biggest thing. I definitely have seen that a lot, especially in the adolescents that I do therapy with, that I never thought would open up. And guess what? They didn't for like 6 solid months. I would be going back to supervision and be like, what am I doing? And we just kind of came to the point of, you know what, if all they get out of this is they've had a positive experience in therapy and they don't share anything, so at some point when they're ready to talk about it later in life, that's good enough for me. I'll take it as a win. So I kind of applied that same type of idea, because it can be really defeating as in whatever profession you're in, when you're trying to be that helper in that bridge, to be told no or like not get anywhere for a really long time. But usually at some point, like a little sliver is going to open up, and then you'll be really glad you hung in there and were that consistent person for that amount of time.
Mary McKinney wrote in the chat that the moment of change is generally one moment in a series of a lot of steps that have led to the spot where change can be visualized around the corner and another step taken towards it. If you know Lauren Rinkert, she's a professor in the social work department, and she was talking to a class one time and said, most of us want to go farther and faster than the people around us are ready to go. And so just keeping in mind that kind of patient, being fully present, even when movement doesn't appear like it's happening. John, is there anything that you can add to that?
Not other, just being there, and just don't ever give up, is the big thing. I've seen people, like I've been in recovery for 30 some years, and I've seen people come back after 15 years, and see that familiar face, see that person that was there, when they went back out or whatever. And that means a lot, is that consistency, being present, and letting them know that you care, that's the big thing. It's just, I get so many rewards from doing this job, just by being there for somebody, and tell people all the time, you shouldn't be a saint just because you give somebody a pack of nabs, but a lot of people, that's where they're at,
That's a good point. Jeannie, do you have anything to add to that?
I've learned so much from John in just that way of being present and being giving, and some of the most bizarre things, like, you know, I'm first name basis with Family Dollar Store because I'll go in and get like the dollar packs of, you know, cookies and stuff and keep them now. And it's kind of like humbling, and it's a healthy reminder of me, because there were so many times where everybody in my life should have give up on me. They should just said, Jeannie, honey, it's just take the high road or go or something. And those people didn't. And I remember every one of them. I remember every one of them who lovingly was there, yet didn't necessarily sign off on my crap. They, you know, just said, we'll love you right where you're at, but, you know, you're really messing up. And those things made the difference for me. And I held on long enough to say uncle. And so that's the most important thing. Like John said, I've seen people come in meetings intoxicated for 2 years, and all of a sudden they come in one day and they're clean and they don't stink and they are, you know, verbal, and you can make sense out of them. And they heard everything that was being shared in one way or another, however that was. And no one kicked them out. No one said, you can't come. They just kept coming and finally realized they wanted to live differently. So.
Joey, thoughts on that? No,
Yeah,
Joey.
just echoing what both them are saying. It's everybody has their own timeline, their own path. All ours are different, you know, and sometimes it takes people 3 to 4 years to have that kind of aha moment of clarity, and then clean it up. It's just about being there. I know in my recovery, the people I remember the most is like my grandparents who were there, and they definitely didn't like who I was or had became, but they were still cared for me and they were there for me. So it's just about being there and caring, and that I think that means a lot to people.
Thanks for that. And Elizabeth made a point about an ulterior motive. And I used to say before I started understanding trauma that children and dogs can always sense out when you're not genuine or when you're trying to force them to do something. And I have, now that I know what I know about trauma, I include people with trauma experiences, because they know if you've got an ulterior motive or if you're trying to trick them into doing something or any of those kinds of things. So I think that genuine, you know, place of acceptance and non-judgment and just being okay with loving them where they are. Definitely I've noticed and discovered that the more you push, the farther they retreat. And so that's such a difficult balance to be fully present and genuinely care, have good boundaries and self-care and wellness, and still show care and concern for somebody who's really struggling. It's difficult. That's why y'all have your 50 hours or 60 hours of training, is because it's a hard thing to do and it takes a lot of skill. So good question. Any other we got about 4 or 5 minutes. If there's any other questions or thoughts, anybody, I'm reading the chat. Very uplifting, inspiring conversation. Appreciate the work y'all are all doing. Thank you for your time and for sharing your experiences. I'm so glad for your work. Very powerful. Thanks for sharing. Any other thoughts or questions before you go, Elizabeth?
I just want to throw out one thing. We do have naloxone available at the health departments. So if anybody is, you know, interested, and we have them for free, that being the keyword. And so if anybody wants a naloxone kit, I know that Donna and her team have done a really good job through the last couple of years of making sure that agencies have them on hand too, if they feel the need, and will, you know, are to do trainings and stuff too on how to utilize them. We have Narcan and naloxone available, but people can walk in like off the street and come up to the front clinic window at any of the health departments. But I know we're in Watauga, so we know how to check them out, like, and to kind of fill out all the forms that people need. So those are available here. So, you know, if clients are interested or don't can't get one anywhere else for free or whatnot. I know anybody can get them from the pharmacy, but oftentimes those cost. We do have those available.
And so I didn't know that. I appreciate you mentioning that. So any of us could go and get one of those kits to have either at school or at home or in our cars. And
Not in your car, because you
not in your car.
don't keep your Narcan any place you wouldn't keep a puppy or a baby.
Okay.
But keep it in your pocketbook or your back pocket or in your office or whatever. Yeah, because of the North Carolina standing order. And that some of the harm reduction presentations that I know we do, we talk a lot about the laws that go into that so people really understand.
And so if somebody doesn't know what that is, Elizabeth, do you mind just take 10 seconds and explain what you're talking about?
Sure. North Carolina has a couple of different laws, but back in 2015, Jeannie, John, correct me if I'm wrong, they passed basically a North Carolina standing order, which basically means that every person, even a temporary resident, so App State students count, in North Carolina basically have a prescription to carry Narcan and naloxone. So you can go to any pharmacy and have it run through on your insurance. You can pay for it out of pocket, or you can have it distributed to you from another entity, and you can have it. And again, ours are free. So, but if you get pulled over and you have syringes and you have 2 vials of your naloxone, you're not going, like, it's legal for you to have them. It would be like you carrying an insulin prescription around. So that's covered.
I think we ever under that Good Samaritan law, just like CPR, if you use it in good faith, and you can be held liable for using it on someone.
Donna, you were going in and out. I'm sorry. Now that you're sitting down, will you say what you said again?
Sure.
Oh, we're still not getting you. Maybe if you don't mind, you can maybe type it in the chat for us.
I'll say it for really quick. Or
Okay.
John, go ahead.
I think she was trying to say under the Good Samaritan law that you're not liable as long as the person is in, and you think the person is overdosing, then it's perfectly fine to give it to them. You know, you're not held liable for anything that you do in trying to save a life, you know. And me, Jeannie, and Joey are more than happy to bring it to you, train you. We'll do, your staff will do, anybody that wants to be trained individually or as a group, you know.
Very cool. And Candace said, just in case somebody doesn't know what Narcan is, John, will you tell the audience what Narcan is?
Yeah, it's an opioid agnostic. It knocks the opioids off the receptors in the brain and brings you back to life, basically, is what it is. If you're in an overdose situation, and it gives you another chance.
And one thing that I've learned just from watching TV and stuff, if you're not having an overdose, it can't harm you. So you can't, like, if you administer to someone you think is having an overdose, you can't do any more damage.
No.
So that's important too. So thanks so much. I need to let everybody go. We're about done with our time.
Hey, Denise, can I say something real quick? This is Jake Harkey.
Hey, Jake, absolutely.
Hey, I know most of you probably don't know me. I'm a police officer with Boone. And I just want to let you guys know, as far as the 911 Good Samaritan laws that they were talking about, even if you're like a friend, if you're working with your clients and a friend is scared to call police, unless they're trafficking levels, they're not going to be charged. They can always call and we can bring Narcan. All of us officers carry it as well as EMS, but a lot of people are really fearful when we get on scenes that they're scared they're going to get charged, and that's just not the case. Under those laws, no one's going to get, unless now if they're trafficking it, yes, which I don't think anybody wants people trafficking those things anyway, but if it's just an overdose and we get there and it's, you know, possession, that's just fine. We will seize it and it'll be destroyed.
Thanks, Jake. We appreciate that. It was good to hear from you. I appreciate you chiming in. All right, everybody. I think we could keep going, but in the interest of time and respect of all that you have, the demands on you, I'm going to let y'all go. And thanks for spending an hour with us. And we hope that you have a good rest of the day. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you, Elizabeth, John, Joey, Jeannie, and Donna. We appreciate you making time to be with us. Everybody have a good rest of the day.